Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Barely Bookish. Today, we are continuing on with our discussion of Interview with a Vampire, and I am joined once again by Candace.
Hello.
We're going to be picking up with the theater scene, so that's exciting.
Mm.
Because the, aptly named Vampire Theater that they
Yep.
didn't check out at all first.
Did not do their due diligence.
Definitely not.
Mm-mm.
Definitely not. They did no research. They were like, maybe we'll show up in this town and find other vampires. We'll see what happens. So they basically sit down, and I thought they were all just going to meet there. No, they get ushered into a play, which is fine.
Yep.
Um, and this play, Death just like takes center stage. Um, and you see an old woman chasing Death, but she can't die. So Death's like, nah,
Mm-hmm.
dog. You
Like
go over there.
Death makes they're so shitty to her though. Like that's the thing that really fucked with me in this
Mm-hmm.
scene is how mean they are about it. Cause she's
Mm-hmm.
begging for Death because so you know that it's a real woman, right? Like it's an
Mm-hmm.
actual woman. It's not like a vampire. Like everybody on stage is a vampire, or the person playing Death on stage is a vampire who has like a
Mm-hmm.
mask and stuff on and like a cloak. But the woman, the old woman, is human, and she looks
Mm-hmm.
disoriented and confused, and she's like when you say begging, like she is a begging, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then he sniffs her and then does like a stinky face and waves his hand in front of his nose like she smells bad. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's horrible, man. You're already old. Like, leave this lady
Yeah,
alone. She doesn't need this in her life. Like,
literally.
that's so rude. Like, what are you doing, man? Come on.
I also thought it was supposed to be like a sign kind of about vampire, like symbolism, I guess, about
Hmm.
vampires that like they're internally really old and just can never die. I don't know if that was what they were trying to do with it, but that's kind of how I took it.
Well, I think that malaise of waiting for a death that will never come. Like this lady is
Mm-hmm.
waiting for death and it'll never come, right? Like I do think that that's supposed to be a parallel. But I think that vampires stay beautiful and sexy and
Mm-hmm.
fragrant and, like porcelain and, whatever. Um made of marble, I should say, rather than porcelain. They
Mm-hmm.
stay that perfect forever, whereas this person is actively rotting and decomposing. And I feel like it's designed to both affirm the vampire's immortality,
Mm-hmm.
internally, and then externally to make the audience afraid of their own mortality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is very powerful imagery. Like I don't
Yeah.
doubt, very powerful, but also what the fuck.
Mm-hmm. Fair. Fair. Yeah, it's a very strange play. Let's just say that.
Yep.
Um, but then the pretty lady rolls off, and Death is supposed to be like in love,
Mm,
which is something.
yeah.
It's definitely something.
So that I think is also metaphor for the vampires. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't want the old woman because offering the old woman immortality doesn't serve them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think that this is foreshadowing as well. Again, I know the ins and outs of the basic brushstrokes for this book, but it's been a
Mm-hmm.
long time since I've read the fine points of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So the in this scene, it becomes really clear that they've kidnapped another person for their
Mm-hmm.
play. And she's young and she's beautiful. She has long blonde hair, and she's very thin and kind of waifish, and she's sobbing her eyes out. Like she's terrified. I think Louis even says he can smell her fear from their box seats. Like she's
Mm-hmm.
terrified, right? And when death is in love with her, I think that's supposed to be a metaphor for who they choose to turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they they see her as a meal, right? As tribute, as this life's blood essence, but they also view her as full of promise, right? In a way that the
Mm-hmm.
old woman isn't. Like they could save the old woman from death. They refuse to. They could
Mm-hmm.
save this young woman from death, and it would serve them because she's young and
Yeah.
beautiful. But even then, I think the point is do they or do they not, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
But the treatise that Santiago does as Death about young flesh, is very
Mhm.
beautiful. And I think that like the rest of this scene feels predatory. And I think
Yeah.
it's designed to make everybody feel a little bit uncomfortable. But
Mhm.
the bad part is that the people in the audience don't realize that it's not acting.
Mhm.
Like this girl is legit afraid for her life and is like trying to run off the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I think it's like really interesting because I've heard this like explored before,
Hmm.
where it's like, what line is it that it's cross, like at what point is it crossing a line between acting and like, oh, I need to call the cops,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And I oh.
There's a big conversation happening right now. I opened the article, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But it's
Mhm.
about I think it's called Idol or something like that. There's a new show on HBO that
Mhm.
stars The Weekend and Lily Rose Depp,
Mhm.
and it's by the makers of Euphoria, which, like in my opinion, is a very artistic show.
Mhm.
I think it tells a really beautiful and very sad and ugly narrative about teenage drug use. Um, it's definitely sensationalized, but I feel like it's a
Mhm.
solid show to watch if you can kind of stomach it. But apparently, this new show leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to that kind of expertise and uh, artistic touch. It just feels like torture porn. Apparently, people are like, it's just torture
Oh.
porn. Like, it's not. It doesn't feel good to watch. And granted,
Mhm.
Euphoria is hard to watch. Like, not going to tell you it isn't. It absolutely is. Content warnings, trigger warnings, all over the place.
Mhm.
But it at least feels personal. It feels like art. It feels like there's a reason for it to exist, right? Apparently, this new show, people are just like, how did this get made, right? So
Yeah.
I very much feel the same way about this play, this part of the play, because like
Mhm.
this girl's crying real tears. She's like her nose is snotty. She's running. The vampires have the vampire has like her wrist in like a vice grip. You can see her skin lighting up underneath it, right? Like the red
Mhm.
of the skin coming in from being gripped so tightly. Like she is horrified. And like we talked a little bit about this last time, like the theaters, like the
Mhm.
Penny Dreadfuls and like the creepy, theater of the macabre and all that stuff that was going on at that time in Paris, especially. And I think a lot of those, I can't remember what they're called. There's like a fancy name for them. But they specialize in making you uncomfortable because like again, art is
Yeah.
supposed to make you feel something. Sometimes the feeling is elation, sometimes it's joy, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's misery, sometimes it's confusion, right? Art is supposed to
Mhm.
make you feel something. And this I think that movement was largely about making you feel terror,
Mhm.
because again, like we're talking, like in the 1800s and stuff, you have, a lot of like romance authors coming up. You've got, like horror being kind of like first kind of written into formal existence.
Mhm.
Like you've got, like the older stuff in the 1700s too, with of Nathaniel Hawthorne and people who were writing things that were scary, like early Poe and stuff like that. But like when you really get into like horror, right? Like Frankenstein, Dracula, right? Like those texts, like that's kind of around this time when people were looking for something else to kind of like make them feel alive. And I feel like that's what the audience gets out of it, right? Like watching this woman suffer, it's easier for them to excuse it and make it feel like it is fake, like it's all just a ruse, it's all just a game,
Mhm.
partially because them watching it makes them feel more alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's easier to overlook because you're so focused on this emotion that you're having right now in this moment watching the play, rather than let me think a little bit more and let me think deeper and see if I'm really seeing what's in front of me. Because like
Mhm.
the way that Louis describes it and the way that Claudia is like titillated in that moment, like I feel like other people could have picked up on the fact that this is real, and the fact that they have multiple shows, right? The fact that like
Mhm.
this is not the first time they've ever made this one show. This is something that's ongoing. People come under cover of darkness to enjoy this. It's like a step away from a snuff film. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's bad. But again, I think that people are the audience is so hungry for those emotions that it elicits that they turn the other cheek. They like look away when they should absolutely be staring right at it.
For sure. I also think a lot of people just kind of like when something's in a film, there's there's like they're a step away from it too. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that they're like, oh, what can I do? Like nothing. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
Like, I think when you see like on-screen torture just for torture's sake, like we've talked about like torture porn before,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like a lot of people just feel like they're a step away from it, so it doesn't really matter, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like that shit, it absolutely does matter because that like some of those things should not be put out. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how to phrase what I'm thinking, but yeah, that's just my take on
Aha.
it, I guess. Huh.
Okay, so it's
Okay.
called the Grand Guignol, but
Mm-hmm.
it's written Grand and then
Mm-hmm.
Guignol. So Guignol, if you are have a coarse American pronunciation, but I'm looking online and it's Grand Guignol. But basically, that was a whole system that was operating in like the lower parts of Paris that like had like
Mm-hmm.
on stage unsimulated sex, death, like themes of like buckets of blood. It was lo-fi, so it wasn't supposed to be real, which I think is why this theater shines because it's the
Mm-hmm.
most convincing, but it's the most convincing because they're actually murdering ladies on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So it's
terrifying.
basically like those like dark web cam
Yes,
like things.
that's basically what we have now. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of simulate that. And sometimes those people, because I mean, there have been instances as well where like people find out, oh yeah, it was just a joke. I mean, Blair Witch Project, right? That's an OG internet example. The Blair
Mm-hmm.
Witch Project, when it came out, had a really viral marketing campaign. It was one of the first like big computer led guerrilla marketing campaigns, advertising campaigns in history, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
the internet was a newish place, and people were like, how do we monetize, this? How do we use it to drive ad sales? This is early days. So when
Mm-hmm.
Blair Witch Project came out, they basically put up wanted posters, like missing posters of the three characters from the movie. And because they were little known actors, there was like their first roles, nobody was familiar with their faces. So
Mm-hmm.
people thought it was real. Multiple places across the world, like in America, and I think in France is one of those places as well, where people thought, like Australia, I think this happened too. Like people thought these people were missing in their
Mm-hmm.
city and like organized searches to look for these people because they thought it was real, right? Like whole websites devoted to it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh hey, these people went missing in this forest, blah blah blah. And it was all supposed to be like tongue in cheek. It was all supposed to be like, oh, it's for an upcoming movie. In fine print at the bottom, it was like, this is a movie, copyright date, right? Like, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't make it obvious enough that it was for a movie. And there were a lot of people who were tricked into thinking that these people had gone missing and
Oh
vanished.
god.
So
Yeah.
like, yeah, like that's early days of that on the internet. And like
Mm-hmm.
there have been stories definitely that have been uncovered that like people were watching something they thought was sensational, but it actually was the real thing. I mean, down to R. Kelly, right? R. Kelly was just indicted for additional years in prison
Mm-hmm.
for the video that supposedly wasn't of him. But and
Mm-hmm.
people watched it, right? Like I remember trying to download like the Spider-Man trailer. I was trying to download something that was very innocuous and innocent, and some
Mm-hmm.
monster had decided to put that in the link instead, so it was labeled Spider-Man, but when you opened
Yeah.
it, it wasn't. Like people used to do that all the time in like the early days of like Napster and LimeWire and Morpheus and all those old
Mm-hmm.
Kazaa, like all those old downloading torrent sites. Um, they would do that all the time. They would put like something horrible in there. Like it was that first time I saw salad fingers, it was because of that.
Mm.
Somebody had put like an extra creepy salad fingers gif or something
Yeah.
in the link or whatever. So yeah. So this is what I'm saying. Like all this to say,
Mm-hmm.
all this to say, sometimes people don't want to see it, right? They
Yeah.
want to make excuses because they're busy feeling something, right? Oh, well, you know what? Chris Brown makes me feel really romantic. I love Rihanna and I love him and I don't want to come between them. It's not about coming between anybody. It's not about, oh, I don't want to pick sides. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about that. He did something fucked up. He's not sorry. He has threatened other women, right? He was
Mm-hmm.
with a girl, she's on that Claus show. I can't remember her name.
Mm-hmm.
Karuchi Tran. So
Mm-hmm.
Karuchi Tran dated him after Rihanna. She has a restraining order against him. A blonde model that he was dating after her, restraining order against him. He destroyed
Yeah.
her phone because she said that she had like video of him strangling her friend. So he like destroyed her phone and before it could upload to the cloud. So now there's no record of that. Right? He's like, I didn't do it. You have no proof. But the girl's like, he destroyed my phone. But there's nothing, it's he said, she said, right? There's nothing that
Mhm.
anybody can do. All his entourage corroborates his story. So there's nothing to, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to pursue that. So this is what I'm saying. Like, there's there's a lot that people are willing to overlook.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that people are willing to look away from, right? To
Yeah.
ignore, to make excuses for, because they're busy feeling their feelings and they don't
Mhm.
want to feel accountable. They don't want to feel like they're a party to something. They don't want to feel like it's their fault, right? So I
Yeah.
imagine this whole audience at this fucking vampire theater, even though they're seeing something that's horrifying, even though they're seeing something that's obviously wrong, the blood is a little too real, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's one of the things Louis says is like, how can anybody be tricked by this? She's crying. Like, her skin is puckering and dimpling. Like, they rip her clothes off in front of everyone. She's standing there naked in front of everybody. She has goose flesh all over her body. Like, all her fight responses and flight responses are
Mhm.
displayed, but everybody's too busy enjoying the show to recognize that
Yeah.
this girl is about to get murdered in front of them. And then she does. All those vampires descend from the shadows, right?
Mhm.
Like, and there are a lot of people in the audience that are breathless, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
like, it's exhilarating, which I can understand. You're sitting there, they're giving you maximum creepy vibes, right?
Mhm.
You're feeling it. You're in the zone, right? It's terrifying
Mhm.
in there. Like, I get it. Like, that's awesome. Like, I love watching horror movies and feeling absolutely terrified, right? Like, it's a really
Mhm.
fun experience. But the line between what is real and what is not has been blurred. And now it's easier for the audience to push it off and push it out of their minds, which
Mhm.
is how those vampires live in plain sight, because they're always weird, right? Like, they're
Mhm.
always weird. No one expects them to not be weird. No one expects them to take off the grease paint at the end of the day and just be a normal person, because whenever they see them, they look like they're in costume. But they're
Mhm.
not in costume, they're vampires. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, to me, it is horribly wrong what they do to the girl. Obviously, that's not great. But I
Mhm.
think that it was genius of them to
Mhm.
make that mechanic to live in plain sight. It's almost like anglerfish, right?
Mhm.
Anglerfish need that light so that they can. I mean, anglerfish are like blind, right? I'm pretty sure. Like, a lot of them are blind. Lots of creatures at the bottom of the ocean. They feel. They don't like see, right? Because it's dark.
Mhm.
The reason the anglerfish has the light is so he can kind of blend into his surroundings and make another fish think, ooh, that's food, or ooh, that's plankton, ooh, it's bioluminescence, right? So another
Mhm.
smaller fish is like, oh, I'll be safe over there because it's not dark like the rest of the, oh God, I'm in its mouth, right?
Yeah.
That's literally what they do. They hide in plain
Mhm.
sight. Like a lot of oceanic creatures do that very well, where you can't tell that there's a predator until you're already bit by this thing. And I think
Mhm.
that's essentially what these vampires are doing, is just hiding in plain sight. And I think for Louis, like, he goes to Paris thinking there's a better way.
Mhm.
Lestat also hides in plain sight, but as like an aristocrat, right? An aristocrat
Mhm.
who is, you know, who is very bossy and very foppish and very like, give me what I want now, so that people don't ask questions. When you threaten somebody or you tell somebody what to do versus asking, they don't have time to think. They're just like, yes, right? They respond
Mhm.
to you immediately. So like, that's Lestat's whole MO. And I
Mhm.
think Louis was hoping to find something that was gonna like change his mind about being a
Yeah.
vampire, right? Show him, oh, there's a different way to do this. Oh,
Mhm.
hey, you can coexist with humans peacefully. Because he's like, oh, you're in the biggest city, the fanciest city in the world, right? You're in Paris.
Mhm.
Like, clearly you must know how to do this. You must know the art of living among humans. And the vampires
Mhm.
are like, yeah, you eat them on
Mm.
stage. And he's
Yeah.
like,
Casual.
what the fuck, man? Like, Armand's like, as one does. I don't understand. Why are you so upset? Like, we are gods
Mhm.
and they are lambs. Like, this is how the circle of life works, Mufasa, right? And Louis
Yeah.
is like, no, this isn't what I want. And he's like, I don't know what you want me to tell you, man. Like, I don't know what you want me to say.
Yeah.
What do
Well,
you
it's
want from
like
me?
they can also say that they're like really method actors too. Like, who's
Yeah,
that guy? I think he was in like American Psycho or something, and
Christian
he
Bale.
lost. Yeah, was it him that lost like a shit ton of weight? He was
For,
like 80
yeah,
pounds.
for I think The Machinist or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Like they could just be like,
Yep.
yeah, we're really into our theater.
That's exactly what they think.
Hmm.
That's what the people of the town think, right? They only see them at night. Why? Well, I mean, they're theater actors, right?
Yeah.
Like, we might see them during the day, but they're not in costume. Who knows, right? That air
Hmm.
of mystery is something that they can keep because of the profession they've chosen. Like, the
Hmm.
whole thing is just so, like, it's so tied up in a little bow, right? Like, it's so neatly packaged that like people aren't asking any questions. And Louis is like, what I love in this scene. So first of all, there's a lot of repetition in this scene. Critiquing Anne Rice as as an actual writer, right? As an author.
Mm-hmm.
I think her story design is good. I think she comes up with great characters. I
Mm-hmm.
like the internal struggle that Louis is going through, especially in the wake of having a child who has the complete opposite problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's really really exciting. Like it's always good to have like a big softy and like a little vicious guy, right? That's wonderful. Anime
Mm-hmm.
has been drilling down on that archetype for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's never not like either hilarious or poignant or beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that like she must have said glittering or glitter or sparkle.
Mm-hmm.
I think my last count was like 10 times in 3 pages. Like
Yeah.
it was a little much. It was a little much for me when you're talking about the actual writing itself. Like I was surprised because I feel like you would get slapped really hard by your editor for that these days. Um Maybe it was a different time.
Yeah.
It was 70s.
I've noticed that. Like, I
Mhm.
think that writing has evolved a lot,
Yeah.
you know? Whereas
Mhm.
there's things I could write. So, like, for example, I'm going to just take Fahrenheit 451 as
Mhm.
an example. Like, that is something we consider a modern classic. However, it's not good.
Mhm.
Like, this dude wrote it on a typewriter in the 50s that he paid like a penny per page or something. It was
Mhm.
like basically one draft and just press the submit button.
Mhm.
Like you would get crucified if you
Yep.
tried to do that today. Like we
Absolutely.
have beta readers, we have like
Mhm.
sensitivity testing, like
Yep.
sensitivity groups, you know. There's so many when you go to like I'm just talking about like self-publishing.
Yeah.
Most people who self-publish books still go through beta readers. They still go
Mhm.
through like all of this like finite like make sure my book is good before I show it to the world. Like of
Mhm.
course there's people that still just press the submit button and be like, "Ah, whatever, I wrote a book." But most people don't do that.
Right.
And like it's just insane to me that like you could kind of get away with anything like prior to the 2000s, I'm going to say.
Mhm.
Like prior to the 2000s is when they really started cracking down on like making sure you put out good shit because I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people now realize that like writing could be a career path
Yep.
for them. Like that didn't really seem like a job that people could have for most of the time unless you're like a cis white man. And now it's like, oh no, anybody can be a writer, but let's make sure that shit's good. You know
Well,
what I
that's
mean?
that's part of the problem too with self-publishing is
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to go through Penguin or
Yeah.
Scholastic or Random House or whoever, right? They're going to test
Mm-hmm.
the fuck out of your stuff and they're not going to have to pay a bunch of money to do it. If you self-publish, it almost rewards you for your cut corners. Like I remember one of the first freelance editing jobs I got when I started to pivot my career into writing was they're actually a pretty popular romance novelist. And they have like a series about a millionaire. It's like millionaires type of things, right? Like so
Mm-hmm.
you meet this millionaire and blah blah blah.
If you
So
tell me 50 Shades of Grey is who you were working for,
no,
I'm gonna
no, no,
scream.
no, not mainstream high profile. More like they sell a lot of books on like Amazon, right?
Okay.
Um, so like Kindle books and stuff. So I had a job editing their stuff, and I remember I'm reading it right, and I'm correcting their grammar and their tense and all that stuff, and I'm pointing out inconsistencies and whatever, and I'm making notes as I go through. And I
Mm-hmm.
got to a part that was like a little weird about race. Like they were
Mm-hmm.
saying some weird stuff. Like they traveled to an Asian country, and there was some stuff that they said that like wasn't great. Um, and they said something that wasn't like amazing about like one of like the black stewards or something like that, right? Of their
Mm-hmm.
like ship or their cabin or whatever the crap. And it wasn't like horrible, but like it certainly wasn't great. And I was like, listen, this would turn me off as a reader. If I saw this and I bought this book, I'd ask for a refund.
Yeah.
And the author's response was basically like, well, I don't offer refunds. It wasn't let me fix that. It wasn't I can see how that would be a problem. Thank you so much. It
Mm-hmm.
was it doesn't really matter if it's good. Like they're like it just needs to
Yeah.
be edited so that the grammar's not bad. And then I went to all their pages, right? And the number one complaint was horrible grammar, horrible spelling, horrible editing, over and
Mm,
over and over again. Idea wasn't bad, story wasn't bad, content wasn't bad, but the rest of it was just like atrocious. It's really difficult
yeah.
to get through. So that's why they chose to hire me to edit, right? So
Mhm.
like I feel like self-publishing sometimes, especially if you already have an audience, right? If there's a group of friends that you have that support you, or a
Mhm.
group of people that really want to read your stuff, sometimes it can kind of trick you into not editing as much. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
kind of how things were, like you said, back in the day. Like with Anne Rice, when you read her other books, I'm pretty sure Interview with the Vampire is like her first big published piece. When you
Mhm.
read like The Witching Hour, right? Like the first Witching Hour book is similar length to Interview with the Vampire. It's like 500, 600 pages, right? Or something like that.
Mhm.
It's like it's a thick bitch.
Mhm.
Um, but when you get to the second and third novels in that series, they're much, much slimmer. And I kind of feel like that's because the first book, she was like, don't edit it. I'm a big talent. This is what I want, right? But I think for the
Mhm.
second and third, somebody was like, hey,
Yeah.
we trust you, you trust us, let me add it, right? Because it was much more succinct. And I think that like brevity is something that, especially now that we have Twitter and everything is short form on social media, right? Like
Mhm.
it's harder for people to write long form. And when you do, it starts getting kind of like, I don't know,
You also make more money if you
meandering,
just split it
you
into
know.
2, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, like if you don't know how to craft like a plot hook
Mhm.
to be able to find a logical place to put your split between breaking up your ridiculously long. And that's the thing too. Like I think it also comes down to the skill of the writer. Like Mists of Avalon is a Bible. Like that book is chunky, right? Like
Mhm.
if you ever decide you want to read Mists of Avalon, first of all, I'm down. Second of all, it is a buff
I'd love to
bitch.
get it.
Okay, it
Yeah.
is big. And it's great. It's well written, it's beautiful, but it is like the print is small and the book is big. um and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's an epic.
Mhm.
It's telling the story of King Arthur from the women's perspective. Like it's an epic novel,
Mhm.
but it's long as fuck and it's
Yeah.
serious. It does not feel as repetitive as Interview with the Vampire, which I'd argue probably has 25 to 30% fewer pages.
Have you read
So,
Legendborn yet?
no, but it's on the list.
So good. I am
Yeah.
like currently reading it right now just because you said Mist of Avalon and I looked up what that was.
Mhm.
Bump it up. Bump it up.
Okay.
If you like that, you're gonna like this.
Awesome.
Lots of Arthurian stuff in it. I haven't finished it yet,
Ooh.
so I don't know if it gets like it's already good, but I don't know if it's like going to continue to get better. But I'm like halfway through it.
That sounds very exciting.
Yeah, and like
Heck yeah.
I think the thing you're probably going to find the most interesting, like you're probably going to relate to, I mean, is that like there is a lot of conversation about basically this little social group she's forced herself into
Mhm.
to get like answers is all white people, and so like she like to the point where I think it's really good to read for someone who is like white
Mhm.
because it kind of shows you the other's perspective
Yeah.
in the way of like to the point of she gets introduced to like the group and like
Mhm.
she doesn't have a family name like everybody else does. She doesn't have all
Mhm.
this like lineage stuff. And then they're like, and this is our most diverse group yet, looking pointedly at her,
Mm.
which like
Been there.
yeah, like for I feel like most people like most POC will be like, yeah, obviously I've been there.
Yeah.
Like a lot of white people will be like, ah,
I
having to put
remember the
yourself
day that people said that Candace was diverse. Yes.
like, I just think it's a really good read and it's like a fun way that like to get a different perspective if you haven't like
Yeah.
had that kind of experience, you know?
Awesome. Okay.
Like it doesn't feel like it's punching not up. I don't know. Which way
Yeah.
would you be punching if you're like it's not
It
punch I
feels like
don't know.
it's punching
Whatever.
up and not down.
Yeah,
So it
like
has the Coretta Scott King Award too, which is always a pretty
it's
solid
yeah, it's really good.
awesome. Okay.
I don't know
I'll
much about the
probably
author, but
I think I
overall.
have a gift card to Barnes and Noble that I will be using to
Mm.
purchase this.
Yeah, get it. You're gonna like it. It's been a very good read thus far.
Oh, and there's 2 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just came out with the second one not too long ago.
Awesome. The best.
Yeah, let me know when you read it and like live tweet me your thoughts because I want to know.
I love it. Whew. Okay. And there's queer folks in it. That sounds great.
Yes, there is also. I think I told you that there's like a non-binary person in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what
Very
I was talking
excited for
about.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. Okay. You've sold me.
yeah. It's been really good so far, and I'm only halfway through it. Like I was supposed to have finished it by now, but like life, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but I don't get enough Arthurian. Is it pronounced Arthurian? I've decided it is, but I'm not
Yeah,
committing to that.
Arthurian. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've not gotten enough of that in my life. Like I was obsessed with Merlin growing up and I feel
Yeah.
like I just want to bring that back. Like this is the year that everything that I was obsessed with as a child we're bringing back to the forefront. So we got
Do it.
vampires, we
Yeah.
got magic, we got
Same.
Arthurian legends apparently
Yep.
because
All of that.
yeah, I just need it in my
Yeah.
life.
There's nothing wrong with that. I feel the exact same way. Do yourself a favor. Go to Disney Plus and watch yourself some Sword in the Stone. It holds up.
Okay.
I don't know if you've
I've
seen
never
it,
seen it
but
before actually.
you've never seen the Sword in the
Mm-mm.
Stone. Oh my
No.
god. Oh my god, Rachel. First of all, it's hilarious. Okay,
Yeah.
it's going to be one of the funniest Disney movies. Like, I would argue, for me, the number one funniest and most hilarious Disney movie, hands down, is Emperor's New Groove.
Oh yeah.
You won't talk me out of it. No one can disprove it. It is the funniest Disney movie.
Mhm.
Number 2, close second for me, Sword in the Stone.
Okay.
That movie has laughs and more laughs. There's transformation, right?
Mhm.
Both emotional and physical transformations. There's there's only one kiss, and it is between 2 squirrels.
Aw.
There's a conversation about consent.
Nice.
There is like a triumphant story within it as well. It's great. It's wonderful. And there is one of the best Disney villains of all time that does not get near her share of
Mhm.
appreciation, Madame Mim. Also in my top 3 Disney villains. It's Maleficent, Ursula,
Oh, I love
Madame Mim.
Maleficent. And I love
Yeah.
Ursula.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're gonna love Madame Mim.
Okay.
She's great.
I gotta watch this.
She's spectacular. There's a wizard's duel that doesn't involve weird sprays of colored jizz magic like the
Yeah.
turf books. It's great. It's wonderful. So definitely do yourself a favor. Take a gander at that. There's
Mhm.
also Merlin with Sam Neill. That was a TV movie that is great.
Mhm.
There's also a Mists of Avalon TV movie miniseries thing that is not very good. It's not bad, but it's not as good as the book.
Mhm.
But all of those I highly recommend to you if you are going on this journey. I love Arthurian stuff. I've been obsessed with King Arthur and his knights and all that stuff for
Mhm.
forever. The Once and Future King is a good read if you like that. That's what Sword in the Stone is based on. The very
Mhm.
first book of the Once and Future King, like, because it's split into 4 like almost novella type situations.
Mhm.
The first book is the Sword in the Stone, and that's what the Disney version is based on.
Okay.
Really good stuff.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I need to make time to watch more TV because I don't watch enough. Like I'm always going.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to make time to turn my little brain off and watch a little bit of TV, even if I do it while I'm working or something.
Yeah. I like watching TV now more than I did before because you can curate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know we're going to watch the Interview with the Vampire television show so that we can talk about it and compare it to the book. Very excited for that. It's
Me
on
too.
AMC, and they've been doing right. AMC has been doing an all right job, other than keeping The Walking Dead around for entirely too long. AMC
Yeah.
has been doing a good job with their television. Killing Eve is spectacular, or was spectacular. It's over now, but I like making time for television because I feel like it teaches me how to write better. Like,
Yeah.
I study the dialogue rather than just sitting there and like kind of letting it be passive about receiving the information. I talk a lot about it. Like, my partner and I will sit down and like have full on conversations about what we just watched and what it means. And, oh, but look at this thread. And, like, I just finished watching Andor on the Star Wars show Andor on Disney Plus. And I was able to guess the ending like 3 episodes before it finished. And my partner was like, "How did you do that?" But like, that's part of it for me, right? Like, I watch TV and movies the way that I read books. Like, I always try to do analyses when I'm done, because that to me is how you actually get something from it. Like, movies and TV are art just like anything else, right? They're still
Mhm.
trying to make you feel something. They're still trying to get you to understand something, right? Abbott Elementary is a show that's really doing that, but with comedy added. A
Mhm.
lot of people were like, "Oh, it's just The Office, but like set at a black school." It has a similar makeup of The Office because it's like a documentary crew is following them around.
Mhm.
But I feel like that's really where the similarities kind of end, especially now that we're in season 2. There's a lot of moments that are teachable moments for people that are absolutely gorgeous, and very well written and beautiful. And I think that like that's my favorite part about this like golden age of media that we're in right now, where there's a lot of bad shit out there, right? There's like 18,000 Real Housewives. No judgment if you like that. Everybody needs their bullshit sometimes.
Yeah.
But like there's Dance Moms, you know what I mean? There's like the 40th Survivor season. Like there's trash television on, right? There's
Mhm.
popcorn that come out all the time. Sure, not everything is going to be fucking everything everywhere all at once, right?
Mhm.
But when you get a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, that's both fantasy, sci-fi, right, popcorny, but has like a very deep and gorgeous message that transcends gender, sexuality, and race, ethnicity. Like that's some magic, okay? That's magic to me. And I'm so captivated by it, which is why I think I was so eager to read this book with you again, because say what you want about this book, it has inspired generations of authors, right? Like it has
Yeah.
inspired so much media. It's inspired so much pop culture. Just the glittering alone. Like part of the reason I brought up her repetition of glittering and sparkling is because that is 1000% where fucking Stephanie Meyer got her glittery vampires from. I'm telling you right now, like I will die on this hill until the end of time. Stephanie Meyer can say whatever she wants. I don't care, right? Just like that
Mhm.
lady who wrote The Hunger Games says it's not based on battle royale. It absolutely is, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that like for me, when I see Twilight and how the vampires are like have diamondy skin and they sparkle, that is 110% derived from Anne Rice's descriptions of vampires. The only difference is that
Mhm.
like she means like a metaphorical sparkle, right? The light
Mhm.
reflects off their skin, not like a faceted gem the way they do in Twilight where they're like all
Yeah.
like glittery in the sun, not like that. But like in the way marble shines when the
Mhm.
sun illuminates it, right? It's a natural rock, it's a natural material. There's a translucence to it that gives it this kind of ethereal and kind of glowing quality. But she's using the words sparkle or glitter when kind of getting that point
Mhm.
across. But I am like 99.9% sure that's why the vampires sparkle in those books.
I
And that
also think
obviously changed the course of
Claudia.
pop culture.
I think
Yeah.
Claudia was the OG baby vampire that she references.
Yes.
Like, I will not believe.
Absolutely.
Like, she has to have said that
Yeah.
she takes. And which is fine. Like, you can be inspired by other things. That's totally
Yeah.
fine. But.
Well, I mean, I think it started out as fanfic anyway. Like, it was probably Interview with the Vampire fanfic.
Mhm.
You know what I
Probably.
mean? Like, if you think about Kristen Stewart's character, like if you think about Bella Swan, like, granted, there's no like love triangle in Interview with the Vampire, but like her whole like I'm a human, it's hard. Like that's very
Yeah.
Louis. Like that's
Yeah.
very Louis. Moping around, being emo, writing in your diary, crying about how you got to kill people. Like that's 110% that. And yeah,
Mhm.
Renesmee, first of all, terrible name. Second of all, Renesmee 110% Claudia. Like down to the
Mhm.
auburn curls, the way she's described, right? The way she's
Mhm.
written.
Mhm.
Like it's this book has inspired countless pieces of work to come,
Mhm.
so much so that again, as we've talked about before, AMC is making their own Anne Rice cinematic universe for their next wave of television shows, right? The
Mhm.
Witching Hour comes out, if it's not out already, it's coming out probably in the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
So
I think I know Mayfair Witches is out.
oh yeah, that's what it is then.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
Witching Hour is the first book in the Mayfair Witches trilogy.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I saw something about it when I was doing research for like book lists and like
Mhm.
stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's already out,
Yeah.
but
That's
it
what I'm
like came
saying
out
though, like
recently.
she really did redefine this genre and was a very big celebrity author for a while too. Like we discussed last
Hmm.
time, her son and how he's a not so popular anymore. He was more popular around the 2000s.
Hmm.
Christopher Rice, as a queer author, like a gay
Hmm.
author. However, I remember there was an episode of The Real World. The Real World kind of came back, and for a while they were gone. I think on MTV in like the 90s, like they kept doing their shows. But then they were like, no, we're
Yeah,
doing like The Real World, and they had one that was I feel like Seattle was like the first one they came back on.
I remember Real
Or
World.
Yeah, so there was a Real World season where they go to New Orleans. It's Real World New Orleans.
Mhm.
Notable cast members from that season, The Miz, the wrestler. I don't know if you've heard of him,
I am
but
so bad with pop culture. I don't know what's going on ever.
it's
It's so
okay.
bad.
I know enough for both of us.
Thank you. Because
So The
anytime
Miz
something happens, I'll
is
just send it to you and be like, "Help."
yeah, please feel free.
Yeah.
If something I don't know about, I'd love to learn about it because someone's
Mhm.
inevitably going to ask me. Um, the Miz is like one of the like bigger names in wrestling in the last like 15 years.
Mhm.
A lot of people like him. He has toys and stuff. Like he's a personality that people really have flocked to. But before he was the Miz, he was this dude on MTV's Real World New Orleans. And he was like, I just want to be a pro wrestler. And he would go around the house and like do his wrestling voice and whatever.
Oh
So
my
like if you
god.
watch the Real World and you
Mhm.
see wrestling now, it's like, is that guy? And yes, it is.
I'd
It's really
cry.
it's
I
really
would
crazy.
cry if someone
It's so bizarre.
if
Like
someone
it's cool, but like
yeah.
weird.
All I'm imagining is someone published like my 2014 fanfic that will never see the
Can
light of
you
day.
imagine?
And then I'm
Yo,
like, flash forward like 20 years later, and they're like, and now she's a popular like adult author. And
yep.
I'd be like, kill me.
Please burn it from the
Actually,
internet.
just no. Like, are you
Yo, it's
insane?
really so no lie, it's really hard to find that
Yeah.
season. Like
Yeah.
Hulu has real world streaming, and that's not one of the seasons. Like I have not seen that streaming anywhere,
Hmm.
and I kind of wonder if that's part of why. It wasn't a bad show. Like I remember why it was like one of the first Real Worlds that I was allowed to watch because I was old enough to watch it. Like my mom and dad
Hmm.
wouldn't let me have MTV until I was 16, so um, I had a nice time watching. It was good.
Hmm.
But like one of the highlights of that season, and one of the ways that I was able to bribe myself into being able to watch it, is because they have a whole episode where they go visit Anne Rice. Like it's an Anne Rice
Yeah.
episode. And like everybody that's like the cast and everything, the whole house is like, oh my God, it's Anne Rice, you guys. She's an icon. And she's there like, hey guys, I'm Anne Rice. And they're like, oh
That's
my
so
goodness.
cool.
And it's a big deal. So like I remember as a kid, I was like, oh, Anne Rice, right? Like she was a
Hmm.
big celebrity artist like for a while, like a big celebrity author for a minute in pop culture. But like sort of started to fade. Like she had nothing to do with Queen of the Damned. It doesn't have Tom Cruise in it. As a
Hmm.
matter of fact, like I don't know if you're gonna want to watch Queen of the Dam because it's not super duper related to this book. Like it's mostly about Lestat. After this book, after Interview with the Vampire, it goes Vampire Lestat, I think Tales of the Body Thief, and then Queen of the Damned. I feel like,
Hmm.
or you might want to switch those two at the end. I can't remember which one is 3 and which one is 4 because it's been many moons. But
Hmm.
the rest of the series kind of focuses on Lestat. Like this is about Louis. The next like 2 to 3 books is really more about Lestat, what happened to him, what he's been
Hmm.
going through, how things were, etc. And um Akasha, he finds Akasha because he wants to know more um about like his past and his heritage and stuff. So it's like all about his adventures and stuff like that. But um if you want to watch Queen of the Damned, we can throw that in too. So we can talk about how different List because it's like a totally different version of Lestat. And I
Yeah.
think Anne Rice was mad about it. Like I don't think she was into the new version, like the newest, because Queen of the Damned is like the newest movie that they made,
Hmm.
even though that came out in like 2000 something, like 2001. But she was like famously like, no, I hate it. She
Well,
wrote
it's
the
like
screenplay for
recreating.
Interview with the Vampire,
Yeah.
but refuses to be interested in this shitty version, which I get it. It's bad. I'm not going to
Hmm.
lie to you. There are people who are going to be listening to this right now going, Candace, stop. That movie is so bad. Listen, it is.
Hmm.
It's not good,
Hmm.
but also it's great. So if you like alternative music
Hmm.
and sexy black vampires, it's
Hmm.
definitely the movie for you. I'm
I'm
not
pretty
going to even
sold
lie to you about it.
already.
Listen, it's so bad, but it's really good at the same time. Like it's really bad. The
Okay.
whole soundtrack is by Jonathan Davis from Korn. Like it's
Okay.
great.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh,
it's so
okay.
it's so good.
Oh my
It's
god.
really
Yeah.
bad, but it's really good.
See, I'm okay. I love really trashy vampire.
Oh,
Like,
you're gonna love this. Yes.
yeah, like I'm kind of obsessed. Like the original, what was that show I was telling you about? The with the Dampier vampires. I can't remember, but
Damn it. I don't.
Vampire
What is it?
Academy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the original one, the original TV show,
Yeah.
movie, whatever it was, terrible,
Movie. Yeah.
god
Yeah.
awful.
I remember getting horrible reviews. When you were like, "Oh, I'm watching Vampire Academy," I was like,
The TV show's a lot
"Why?"
better, but like I mentioned, there's definitely some like weird racism in like with the Dampiers versus like I can't remember what they call them, but they're basically like half human, half not, like half vampire. So there's like
Mhm.
some weird racism and like classism jobs shit. But
Mhm.
like I love it. I don't know. I can't not watch it. Like I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. But I love like trashy television. Like I like to turn my little brain off and just like
Mhm.
get fixed in.
That's okay.
It's
Listen,
yeah.
we all, this is what I'm saying. We all need our bullshit show, okay?
Mhm.
What I like is when a bullshit show turns into actually a pretty good fucking show. For
Yeah.
me, that was The Magicians. I watched The Magicians and I was like, this is hot garbage. I'm never going to like this. And then 2 seasons in, I was like, I must watch more. Like,
Mhm.
you become a little goblin for it. And I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. You got to find peace. I am hoping though that there's going to be more substance to this interview with the vampire, because they really do seem to have been thinking about it, and the fact that they kind of teleport the story to like the 1900s instead of
Mhm.
keeping it like in the 17 and 1800s, like this is primarily set, I think is great, especially because they make Louis a black man, which I'm
Yeah.
very excited to see how they do that.
I know. I it's
I
really
have so many
bad.
questions.
I'm heavily considering skipping the movie just to go straight to the TV show because I'm a little too excited. You know what I mean?
I if you want to watch the TV show and then the movie,
Yeah.
I'm all for it. As a matter of fact,
Okay.
if you want to watch the TV show, then watch the movie and Queen of the Dam so that we can have a conversation about how ridiculous Lestat is
Mhm.
in the latter. I'm totally okay with that. And then we
Okay.
can do both movies in one pod.
Okay, that sounds good because I really need to see this TV show and I'm just way too
Yeah,
excited to
same.
like.
Same. Same. The only reason I haven't already watched it is because I knew I was going to watch it with you, and I'm like
Yeah,
terrified it's going to be bad. So if it's bad, I don't want to have to watch it again. So
that's
I've been
fair.
sitting here waiting, and like as you know, we have been on this journey for a minute, and
Hmm.
the show came out, and I was like, and Jason was like, "Do you want to watch it?" And I was like, "No, I'm waiting for Rachel."
I want to do it again where we do it episode per episode. If
Yes,
yeah, okay, because I feel like that's the best way because we talk too much.
we do talk too much. Hopefully, these listeners don't mind.
It's fine.
But I do think that what's nice about going episode to episode, what was nice about going episode to episode on Kindred, even though
Hmm.
it was a horrible experience, other than being able to talk to you.
Hmm.
Um,
I got
I
an
think,
ad for Kindred for
ew,
Black
no.
History Month from Hulu.
Get out of here.
They
No,
listed
that
it
is not how
in
you
the.
celebrate Black History Month.
I was I was shaken to my core because there's like a
Oh
bunch
my
of like
God.
black led movies, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, okay, and then it said Kindred, and I was like, sorry.
No, no. Ah! um, what I do like, though, what I'm excited for that format is because I do think that this show does seem to take its time. Like that's why they made
Hmm.
it a show, so that they
Hmm.
could take their time going through the material and having these like bits and pieces from the book
Hmm.
show up in the show. So I'm very excited. I don't know where they're going to end either. Like I imagine it's probably like Kindred, where they're not going to put the whole book in like as a miniseries. It's probably going
Hmm.
to be until maybe they leave Lestat, I'd imagine, because I know in the
Yeah,
trailer you see Claudia, so we at least get Claudia, but Claudia's with them for a while before Lestat is out of the picture. So
yeah.
I do wonder. I imagine they probably don't get to France by the end of the show, because I think it's only like at 8 to 12, either
Hmm.
8 or 10 episodes, I think, in a season.
And I know that it's gonna be like kind of a reimagining, which is
Mhm.
fine. Like I'm cool with it. I'm excited to see it
Yeah.
because it looks like the cast is like, from what I've seen, is pretty diverse, which is exciting
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
feel like you always run into this issue with vampires where they're like, I think we have to cast white people, and you're like, you don't, no,
You really
please,
don't.
you
You
know,
do not. You do not. Black people can be pale.
yeah.
Um yeah, I totally feel that. Octavia Butler's book Fledgling, I think I've mentioned it before, is about
Hmm.
black vampires. They're probably never going to make a movie out of that, which is fine. Her vampire is 12,
Yeah, I still need to
but
restart
is a
that. I
woman.
started the
So
audiobook and I couldn't get into it. There's some things that I just don't like as an audiobook.
the
Mhm.
narrator, because I've listened to the audiobook of it as
Mhm.
well, the narrator is not great.
Yeah.
People really like Bonnie Turpin. I don't mind Bonnie Turpin. I just have a
Mhm.
hard time with her voice sometimes. Like it's just too, I don't know. there's like a tone in her voice sometimes that makes it hard for me to pay attention. So I had to listen to it on my lunch break.
Yeah.
Like I had to like take 30 minutes a day and drive around and to listen to it. And even then
There's
I kind of supplemented with reading the book.
there's this voice actor that keeps showing up on a lot of the YA books I
Hmm.
read, and he's a male voice actor, and every time he talks he makes it sound like a question, and it's
Oh, I don't like
really
that.
hard, and he like talks like it's a question, and I'm like,
Mm-mm.
ugh, I can't, like every sentence ends with a question mark, and it's really hard for me to listen to him. But like I consume audiobooks a lot,
Hmm.
like at least at the time I did, because I was working out a lot and I was walking and I was driving a lot, so I had a
Hmm.
lot of audiobooks going on,
Yeah.
and he was really ruining it. He was really killing my vibe because I can't handle people that talk like that.
I find that your VO actor can really make or break pretty much anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you've listened to Interview with the Vampire, the audiobook,
Mm-hmm.
the man who voices it has a very kind of strong accent.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't sound the way that I would imagine Louis sounding at all. It's very
Mm-hmm.
weird to hear him, especially if you like have seen Interview with the Vampire the movie and you think of Louis as like Brad Pitt. Like it's really difficult because his
Mm-hmm.
voice is just not. Same thing with Game of Thrones. The guy who reads for Game of Thrones has like a very kind of like, I don't know, the way he says black is weird. He doesn't say like black or block, right? Which is like how you'd say it. If you were British, you'd say black, right? Like with a long A. But he says blick, like BLEK or something. So he's like, Cal Drogo was up on his destria, black as night. His hair was black. The night was black. The horse black. And you're like, what am I listening to? People can really make or break your audiobook. One of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to in my entire life, hands down, and have returned to multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Mists of Avalon is pretty great,
Mm-hmm.
but like World War Z,
Yeah,
I mean, master level audiobook.
I've only seen the
They
movie.
hire So it's nothing like the movie. The movie has nothing to do with the book, really. The movie
Okay.
takes like a piece of the World War Z ideology and
Mm-hmm.
makes it like Brad Pitt's story. But like the book is actually a collection. It's so the book is kind of like a mockumentary, kind of,
Okay.
where it is Max Brooks, who is the son of Mel Brooks, the famous comedian.
Mm-hmm.
So Max Brooks, or Albert Brooks, I think is his dad. Albert Brooks is his dad. I think Mel Brooks is his grandfather.
Okay.
Um, so
Say, I was like, Mel
basically,
Brooks is pretty old, but go
yeah,
off,
he's really
whatever.
old.
Yeah.
So like, so Max Brooks essentially, it's almost like he's himself, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when the zombie war came, there were a lot of survivors, and these are their stories, basically. So like, the book is written like it's a chronicle of a journalist going all over the world to talk to people about like, where were you the day that the zombie war happened? What happened? What highlight do you have from the zombie war now that it is over? So it's like post this thing
Mm-hmm.
happening, we've gotten it under control, we're living our lives now, let's talk about how things were.
Mm-hmm.
So each story is a very different portrayal. Some of them are day one, right? Some of them are like, oh, I saw Patient Zero, which like when you see Patient Zero in World War Z, when they go to, I think, South Korea, I think they're like in a South Korean hospital or something like that, and you see
Mm-hmm.
the guy who was infected. It's taken from the book. That's like one of the
Okay.
parts it's taken from the book. But basically it's like vignettes. So each chapter is like a little like smidgy chapter, and it like goes through what this person did and what they saw, what happened, blah blah blah. The World War Z audiobook, they hire like 30 to 40 different actors to
Wow.
narrate every single one. None of them have a repeat VO
That's so
actor.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
awesome because you're listening to it, and like sometimes you're like, is that Henry Rollins? Is that Alfred Molina? Right? Like sometimes you can pick out like who the voices are. Is
Mm-hmm.
that Common? Right? But sometimes you don't, and you're just like, it's enthralling. Like it's so interesting. All of the stories really come together in a beautiful way. It's just very well thought out, and like I've found that ensemble VOs are something that I think are very intriguing, but have to be done the right way. Like the Golden
Mm-hmm.
Compass, that's an ensemble reading. Not good, in my opinion. Had a terrible time listening to it. Love the book.
Yeah. I tried
That's
to
also a
watch the
modern
movie of
classic you
that
should read.
one, I think.
Hmm.
I didn't
Oh, the
like it.
movie's terrible. No, no,
Okay.
no. Did you read the trilogy?
Mm-mm. I've never read it.
Highly recommended.
Okay.
Great series. Great
I
series.
think when it came
Yeah.
out, I knew there was a book series behind it, but it
Mm-hmm.
was at that point in that point in time I didn't have a lot of time for reading, so I was like,
Sure.
let me watch the show, and if it's good, I'll read the book. You
Yeah, I
know,
heard the show is not bad. I
or
haven't watched the show yet.
I meant the
The
movie.
movie is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Nicole Kidman. No,
Mm-hmm. And I
wouldn't
was like,
recommend.
this is terrible.
Yeah, it's bad. The
Mm,
show though I heard is really good. I do plan to start the show at some point.
It's like that, and it's called like The Legend of something, but it came out. It's like with owls, and it's supposed to be
Oh
based
yeah,
on a yeah, it's supposed to be based on a book series. It's supposed to be really really
Hunters.
good.
I
I
think it's
don't
called like
remember.
Hunters or something like that. I know what you're talking about. It always has
Yeah,
an owl on the cover. There's like different
yeah.
versions of them and stuff. Kind of like that cat series.
The Warrior Cats.
Yeah,
I'm
like
obsessed
that
with
but with
Warrior
owls.
Cats. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The
Hmm.
Warrior Cats. So fun fact for you, Nova and I are making a second podcast
Hmm.
called Novel Nostalgia, where we're revisiting books from our childhood. The first book
Ooh.
series we're doing is Warrior, like the first 8 Warrior Cats,
Yeah, you
or
got to get in some
6.
Animorphs too. People listen to the fuck out of that. Animorphs is
Yeah.
starting to make a big comeback hard. Like somebody just did an Animorphs TTRPG the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've
That's a big
never
one.
read Animorphs.
Me either.
It's
I didn't get
yeah.
into it. I was a Goosebumps kid though.
I wanted to be a Goosebumps kid, but I didn't have access to Goosebumps books, so I never got to be a Goosebumps kid.
Ah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
They were real good.
I might just revisit
Just
that.
read them now.
Yeah, why not? I mean, whatever. Like,
Just start with the first one. Start with the old ones cuz like
mhm,
I will say like having read so a big book for me when I was younger was The Midnight Club, which was
mhm,
just turned into a TV show on Netflix by Mike Flanagan.
mhm,
And he's the guy that did Bly Manor and The Haunting of Hill House.
mhm,
He's great at his job. He's great at what he does. The show is not bad. It's not what I remember. They made a lot of changes to the original text, which is fine. But the book itself was big for me. Like
mhm,
Christopher Pike was huge for me. I read like at least 50% of his catalog. Um, and I remember when I was young, like those books were like spicy. Like they were it
mhm,
was like super spicy YA. Like it was like trashy paperback romance novel, but for teenagers.
mhm.
The first time that I ever saw the word orgy in a book or in life, other
Mhm.
than the band, was a Christopher Pike novel. And my mom was like, "What are you reading?" You know that you're on the right track when your parent is like, "What the fuck are you reading?"
Yeah.
Because then you're like, "You can't take this book from me. Other
It's a
kids don't
book.
read. You can't steal my books. It's the only thing that keeps me going,
Yep.
and it's healthy to read, and you're supposed to be reading for school, and I'm going to tell everybody you took my books from me." And then your parent is like, "Fine, I guess I won't take your book then because you're right. It's important that you read." And you're like, "Good, give me my smut.
Yeah. Thank you.
Don't look at it. You
Yeah.
don't need to know that Interview with the Vampire is talking about teenage boys freely giving blood and erections. You don't need to know that, mom." Like,
Oh my god, when my mom had jury duty when I was like in 8th grade or whatever, when Twilight had just come out, I had read all the books. And then
mm-hmm.
she went to jury duty and she's like, I need something to do. So I heard Twilight's
Uh-oh.
pretty good, stole Twilight from me. And then she's like,
No.
did you read these scenes in Breaking Dawn? And I told her that I totally just skipped the chapters. And she believed me.
So back to the theater, though,
Uh
if you want to
huh.
talk about the theater. So they rip the girl's clothes off.
Mm hmm.
She's crying.
Mm hmm.
They lay her out on the floor.
Mm
She's
hmm.
trying to fight. The rest of the vampires come out on stage, all looking terrifying with black hair and super pale skin. They descend upon her
Mm hmm.
and eat her, and that's essentially the scene, right?
And then
People
it just
leave.
ends.
It's done, right?
Mm
It's
hmm.
over. It's just anyway. So then like Louis and Claudia are sitting up in like the balcony, and like Claudia is just like, "What the fuck?" And
Mm
Louis is
hmm.
like, "I don't know." What is going on here? I'm very confused.
Mm hmm.
And he like looks down at the end of the row, and Santiago is there waiting for him with like this nasty look on his face. And he's like, "I'm not trying to deal with this guy."
Mm
So then like this beautiful vampire who came out at the end of the scene and kind of like got the girl to calm down. Like
hmm.
he has like this glossy auburn hair, and is like has Spanish features, all beautiful and shit. And he comes upstairs and like kicks Santiago's ass and is like, "Get out of here." And then takes Louis down to the study, introduces himself as Armand,
Mm hmm.
and it's like, okay, so and I've new character enters the chat.
Mm hmm.
And Armand is there, and they go to his study, and like he's like trying to be I don't know. I feel like I've never truly gotten a good read on Armand. I feel like that's on purpose.
Yeah.
Um, but like he's so aloof.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's just like I don't know. He's like a weird walking conundrum. I don't know. Armand is a confusing character because he's like got the darkness and mysteriousness of like an angel from Buffy.
Hmm.
But like
He's what
I
I
can't tell
imagine
if he's Mhm.
like early age philosophers where they just kind of look up at the sky and like
And they
question
ponder.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I could
That's the
see that.
energy I got with Armand.
Yeah, could totally see that. It's super weird. But like Louis basically is like, so what do you know? Tell me about being a vampire or whatever. And Armand's like, Louis like, what do you mean? He
Yeah.
gets so upset. Armand's just like, we just exist, bro. Like, we're vampires. And then he
Mhm.
tells him he's the oldest living vampire at 400 years old, which like just doesn't sound right to
Yeah.
me. You're
Yeah.
only 400 years old. I feel like
No.
that's not a long time.
All I'm
Like,
saying is there has to be an OG that's like been around since the first vampire ever walked the earth and has become a
yeah,
recluse, you know?
yeah. Well, because I mean, if you think about it, right? Like, America is like barely 300, like almost 300 years old, right?
Mhm.
America's like a baby when compared to other countries.
Mhm.
Like, you're gonna tell me this vampire is because at that time I think it was I think there was a centennial around 76. Yeah,
Mhm.
1976. So America turned 200 years old, probably around the time that this book was published,
Mhm.
or right before the book was published.
Mhm.
So like knowing that, right? That means that Armand is twice as old as America,
Mhm.
which I'm like, that doesn't seem that old.
Yeah.
Like not even a century.
Mm-mm.
All right, like more than like 2 centuries. Like 2 centuries old doesn't seem prominent, right? I
Yeah.
feel like 800 is like, look at you, daddy vampire,
Yeah.
But like 400,
Hmm. Like I
good for
feel
him
like
though, I guess.
that's when you're entering adulthood as a vampire. You know, that's when you're
Yeah.
like, okay, at that point, realistically, you've had like 5 lifetimes to live.
Hmm.
Like I feel like the first two as a vampire is you build your wealth.
Yep.
No, okay, rephrase. Your first lifetime as a vampire is when you go on your killing spree.
There you go.
This next two are you building your wealth.
Hmm.
Your fourth one is when you like really start to like chill out for a second.
Yeah.
And then your fifth is the one where you go on a lot of weird vacations and blow through most of your money.
So I feel like Armand is like somewhere in between, like he's built his wealth, he has a home, he has a permanent location, he's
Mm-hmm.
got a solid racket, right? But like he doesn't have the control of an older vampire, or Santiago wouldn't fucking try him all the time.
Yeah.
I think Santiago honestly is like the weakest link for Armand. Like the
Mm-hmm.
fact that like because he has such disdain. Like he shit talks Armand. Like I mean Armand shit talks Santiago like while they're in his study together. Like
Mm-hmm.
Louis is looking around at the walls of like art and stuff like that because there's paintings and shit everywhere, and there's
Mm-hmm.
like devils, and he's like, "Where are devils?" And Armand is like, "What's wrong with you? There's no god." And Louis is like, "How do you know?" He's like, "I mean, I'm 400 years old. If there was
Mm-hmm.
a god, I'm pretty sure someone would have struck me down already. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
just sitting here fucking thumb up my butt. Like, what are we doing, right?" Louis is like, "We're devils. It's the children of Satan." He's like, "How are you holding on to this?" And Claudia's just like, "I'm embarrassed." Right? Claudia's in the corner like, I don't know him.
I don't know
Right?
him.
I feel sorry for this man. I do not know this man. I don't know him. But like I feel like very true to what you're saying. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's about to go on like the crazy vacations. Like that's where he
Mm-hmm.
needs to go, right? Like he seems to be looking for a way out because again, I think he knows that this group of vampires has kind of like outclassed, not
Mm-hmm.
outclassed, but like out crazied him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not as adjusted as he is, which like even though they're older, I'm dying to know how old Santiago is personally.
He
Like I
has
feel
to.
like
I
we
think
don't
he's
get
as
there.
young as Louis is, in my
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, because you know he's in his goth era. Like for him, you can tell it's a phase. Like most people, you're like, oh, you're actually goth. But for
Hmm.
Santiago and his little groupies, he thinks you have to be goth to be a vampire.
Oh my god, when Louis realizes they all look the same because they all dye their fucking hair black, they shit talk Claudia's dress. They're like, "What's going on with this pastel dress? What are you
Mm-hmm.
guys doing?" And it's like I love how like bougie they are because
Mhm.
like they have a bunch of shit to say, right? Like just like nonstop, just fucking clowning on Louis and
Mhm.
Claudia, right? Like nonstop. Even the compliments are shitty, right? Like even the compliments are like, your hair is nice and everything, but like, right? Like they're
Yeah.
still like just nasty about it and rude. But like they're shitty to Louis and fucking Claudia because they're just like, don't you know how vampires dress? We are an aesthetic bitch, right? But
Mhm.
then like Louis and Claudia are like, aren't you hiding in plain sight? That's what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you saying? Santiago's like asking Louis a million questions. Like, that got so scary for me. Like, the moment when Santiago is like, he like pretends that he's sad, right? Like, Louis flees from Armand's study.
Mhm.
And because like Armand is not giving him the answers he wants, and he's like all fucking struck dumb by the fact that things are never going to change, they're never going to get better. And it's like, you're a vampire, of course things are never going to change.
Yeah.
You don't change, everything else changes around you, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the nature of the vampire. So he gets all emo and runs off into the distance like, woe is me,
Uh-huh.
why won't anyone understand me? I don't understand,
But at
please
least his
please
daughter with
someone,
them. I'm like, terrible plan, buddy.
hello, right? So he goes out into like the open or whatever, and Santiago's there, and he's got like this emo face on where he's like got his knees drawn up and he looks all like dejected. And Louis like, oh no, this sad creature, his bullshit humanity coming back to him, right? Santiago's like, tell me more about yourself. It'll make me feel better. Totally plays him until Louis is like, wait a minute. You're not sad. And all the other vampires come out and they're like, he's not sad. He's just kidding. I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, they're so shitty. They're like
Yeah.
the worst. He gets to Paris and it's like, I've been waiting. I've been looking everywhere for you, and they're garbage. Can you imagine
Mhm.
that? You're like on a global trek, right? To find your
Mhm.
people, to find your community, right? Like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
going to find them. They're going to be great. Like, I need to go see my people. And you
Mhm.
get there and they're all awful.
Dude, the Claudia later being like, I did all of this and I hate them.
I'm so mad.
Yeah.
Why did we come here? I was seasick for weeks. Ate
Yeah.
nothing but rat sickness, right? Like,
Yeah.
fucking like I can totally understand why they're just put the fuck out, especially knowing that Claudia like obviously has been talking to people, right? And
Mhm.
trying to set up her own future in Paris, trying to figure out like how she can thrive there and leave
Mhm.
Louis. Like there's like very much this underscore. And like I think that's one of the things that really struck me this time around, right? I remember Claudia's story pretty well. I know what's going to happen, so no spoilers, but like
Mhm.
seeing her transformation a second time, it's so much clearer than it was the first,
Mhm.
right? Like Anne Rice uses a lot of adjectives like blank stare,
Mhm.
uh, toneless voice, right? Like
Yeah.
the way that she categorizes and Claudia and her behavior and her affectation is very much of someone who does not give a fuck, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's over it, someone who's just kind of here because she's supporting somebody else, Louis, right? Like
Mhm.
she does not care. She's not in the mood for compromise. She doesn't really want to get to know these vampires. She's passive. She's passively interested
Mhm.
in getting to know these people. Like it's mostly for Louis that she's there. And I feel like this is almost the final straw. I feel like this is the last time that she's finally just like, you know what? I think I need my own place, right? Like I think I
Yeah.
need my own life. Like I love you very much and I'll always love you, but between fucking Eastern Europe and you being scared to death and me having to drive that fucking carriage and this trash, like I think I'm done, right? Like Claudia's just
Yeah.
like, anyway, like she's ready for a new chapter to her life. And like Louis, it's interesting to watch her become the adult
Mhm.
because as far as vampires are concerned, Louis is basically a child, right? He's still a baby compared to her. Like
Mhm.
she's reconciled the fact she's not mortal. She's reconciled the fact that she is never going to die. She's made peace with the fact that she's not going to grow old, right?
Mhm.
Like it's exhausting to her and it's every day just feels a little bit worse. But she's
Mhm.
resigned herself to, well, I'm still a powerful being and I can make my life what I want it, which is
Yeah.
why their hotel room, like when they talk about the hotel room that they stay in, and that Santiago somehow knows everything about because they've been casing their joint for weeks, which is
Mhm.
terrifying when you realize
Mhm.
that they've been watching them all that time. Fuck. That moment, my blood ran cold. I was like, Jesus. So they could have gotten
Yeah.
you at any time and you wouldn't have even noticed. Like at this point, Louis' humanity is becoming a liability for him rather
Yeah.
than something that's nice and keeps humans alive. It's going to make him dead, and probably Claudia too. So
Because it
like,
doesn't even, keep humans alive. Because
yeah,
he just
yes,
gets upset about it, and then he
yeah,
like it's always 0 to 100 with them. They don't ever
yep,
just drink from and release. They don't
no,
do practice catch and then release. They always have to kill.
Yeah. Which is a whole other topic, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think that's why Armand is such a change for Louis. Why, even though he doesn't like what Armand has to say, or the lack of what Armand has to say, I guess I should say,
Mhm.
even though that's a thing that he has, like a problem he's having, he still does learn from Armand.
Mhm.
Like one of the sketchier moments of this book is when Louis goes back after the play to see Armand in his study. There's a young boy there that's 13, I think. So he's not a child like Claudia, but he's also very much not an adult. And Louis goes back there, and the boy kind of approaches him, right, with this very kind of wanton look on his face. It doesn't feel like the look of innocence. It's a
Mhm.
knowing look, like, you need me, right? You want me.
Mhm.
And so he approaches Louis and offers his neck, and Louis sees that he's like riddled with vampire marks, right? Like riddled with bites that are healing.
Yeah.
And so Armand is like, please sample this boy, right? Sample
Yeah.
my boy.
Yeah.
Try some, right? And Louis is like, okay. And so like the boy comes to him and like Louis embraces him. And it's a very explicit scene.
Mhm.
No sex takes place, but Louis mentions this boy's erection at least twice, and how the boy is like moaning with pleasure and stuff, right? And
Yeah.
like he like loves getting his blood drunk and all that stuff, but like it's awkward because obviously he's 13 and that's not great. And I understand age of consent in Paris, I'm pretty sure, is not 16 like it is here, or 18 like it is here rather. Um, there's different lines all over the world for the age of consent.
Mhm.
Um, but this boy essentially like is fine having this sexualized encounter. I think
Mhm.
is what we should say. It's sexual for him. It's sexual for Louis, but they're not having sex.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's like the nail in the coffin as far as whether or not Louis is straight too. That's like
Yeah.
Louis is gay as springtime, which is wonderful.
I
Like
listen. There's no doubt in my mind that this is not a straight man. The entire book.
no, no, not a straight man at all. Sweet baby. Um, It's funny because like when I read his scenes with the lady next door,
Mhm.
the woman who owns the neighboring plantation, in my mind, when he appears to her as a ghost, he's like, in my head, I'm like, can we have like JVN play Louis, please? And we had like a reenactment of that
Mhm.
scene. Like I feel like Louis is there, like, listen, honey, I already told you how to moisturize to look good for all eternity. How to go out there, take those idiot men's money, fucking run them around town, okay?
Mhm.
Take their fucking wealth, girl, take it, right? Like that's literally how I picture the scene
Yeah.
of him being like, you got to get those cucks, bitch. Get that money, right? Like the way that like somebody would like cheer someone on in modern times.
Yeah.
Like the way that your like gay best friend like talks to you. Um, so I don't know. I find it deeply entertaining.
Well,
And
even when he said
I'm shocked.
he loved the neighbor, I was like, this is a bisexual man. Like.
Yes, yes. He thinks she's pretty,
Mhm.
but also her brother is cute too.
Mhm.
That's what I'm getting from this.
Yeah. Facts. Big facts.
Yes, yes. Which I love to see it. Like
Yeah.
give me a fucking bisexual vampire. I honestly think all vampires are bisexual. I think when you can have any and anyone you want, like you stop caring about shame, you stop caring about religion, you stop caring about all the things that like make people not want to consider whether or not they're a little bit gay.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you just kind of go for it. So
I feel like when you
canon for
live
me
that
is
long,
yeah.
you're gonna be like, let me just dip my toe.
I mean, you have literally nothing to lose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
If you're embarrassed about it, you can kill all the witnesses, you know? Like.
this is what I'm saying. You have nothing to lose. Like go for it. Try the whole smorgasbord.
Mhm.
Really. Right? Go for it. Um so yeah, I don't know. I still like this book. Um, I recognize the place that it holds in pop culture. I
Mhm.
understand how it has lasted this long,
Mhm.
but I do very much look forward to, like we were saying, seeing where they take it in a more modern sense with the TV show,
Yeah.
because I think that there's more to be told here, and I think that like this book, obviously it wasn't rewritten, but I feel like it could be rewritten, right? It could
Mhm.
stand to have a rewrite. There are some ways that it's written and some things that are said that like aren't great, especially in like the early days talking about slavery and the plantation and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
there's not a lot of diversity. There could be way more. One of the things that the movie does is they cast Antonio Banderas as Armand,
Mm.
which means that he is a person of color.
Mhm.
So that's one change that happened that I thought was good. They still make him just as white as everybody else's skin and stuff, but I
Mm.
do at least like that, he's in it. And like another Easter egg, Tandy Newton from Westworld fame.
Okay.
Um I mean, she's been in a bunch of shit, but
Mhm.
Westworld and Big Mouth are like her most recent
Mhm.
endeavors that people know. She's in it as one of the slaves on the plantation
Mm. Okay.
in the movie. So there'll be some cameos that you see that you're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
In the movie that are interesting. But yeah, I think that if this book were rewritten, I would be very interested in understanding it. I think it's cool thinking that like in the next like 100 years someone probably will rewrite this because
Yeah.
the Creative Commons license will be up and they'll be like, you know what I'm doing? A retelling of Interview with the Vampire, just like how we have a million retellings of Alice in Wonderland and stuff.
I would love to see someone do a retelling in which Louis is um like a dad. Like
Mhm.
Claudia is his actual daughter who at
Mhm.
16 years old got bitten by a vampire, but like she was really close with her father and was like, I can't
Mhm.
imagine going through this whole life with you. Breaks up with vampire boyfriend, goes on a fun journey with her dad.
Mhm.
Like I would love to see that.
I feel like that's what they did with Let the Right One In. There's
Mm-hmm.
a I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's a
Mm-mm.
Danish film that was made into an American movie that is not as good, but it's about a little vampire who is supposed to be androgynous,
Mm-hmm.
and they meet a little boy that they take an interest in because they're lonely and they want a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So the Danish version or Norwegian, I can't remember. It's a European movie, but um, great film, excellent movie,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely recommend. However, the American version I heard is just fine. I didn't bother watching it because I heard it's like exactly the same,
Mm.
but a little less good. It stars Chloe Grace Moritz as the vampire, and then they just released a show on Showtime,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more about the father trying to save his vampire child.
Okay.
So it's got similar vibes to what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
not the same, but similar. It's on Showtime if
Very.
you want to watch it.
I'm probably gonna be down because I'm just really in my vampire era.
Yeah, let me know what you think. My parents saw it. They were like, Candace, you're going to love it. I'm like, okay, I'll watch it eventually. Got a
Sorry.
lot going on.
Yeah. I almost sent you something the other day because remember me telling you that I like pink, but in like a weird way?
Uh-huh.
I almost sent you this thing because it was exactly my vibe, but then I like didn't for some reason. Don't know why I didn't. But I was like, this is the way I like. Oh, so basically, it was this girl wearing all. I could just describe it to you. This girl wearing all black, and she had a black duffel bag, like
Hmm.
for her gym. And then she opens the duffel bag. It just pulls out pink. All of her like cute stuff like is in pink little like pocket, like you know how you have all your stuff that goes together in like a pink zipper pouch.
Hmm.
Yeah, all of her stuff like her phone charger, blah blah blah, zipper pouch. And I'm like, this is the way that I like pink, you know, like for
Yeah.
very
For
specific,
accessories.
yeah, very
Yeah.
specific things, like not usually for my outfits but for like
Hmm.
small parts of my personality. I like pink.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I like pink electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Yeah,
have a pink stand mixer in my kitchen. That's really beautiful.
I
I
like
like
pink
pink in
in
that way.
vehicles.
Hmm.
Like if I had a stick shift, I'd have like a pink stick, like stick, not stitch, stick.
Hmm.
Jesus Christ.
The knob.
Yeah. I don't know why
Hmm.
my stutter was like, now's my time, but there you go.
It's been waiting to sabotage you.
Yeah, I was waiting for the right moment, and that was the good
Hmm.
one.
Yep.
But I saw someone with like this cute, like kawaii heart. Um, I don't know what they're actually called, but my family calls them Jesus handles because you grab them and you yell Jesus when someone's driving a little too fast.
Hmm.
But someone had like a heart shaped one that hung down off of those handle, and it was
Cute.
like big and metal, and it was really
Yeah.
cute. It was pink.
I mean, it's cute until it beans you in the face, but
Yeah, That's why no
Before
one's allowed
that,
to ride
really cute.
passenger. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was
Man,
really cute.
that's hilarious.
Anyways, the book.
Mm.
So I have to, because we covered a lot of this. Let me see where we're actually at.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why this is zooming weird. Okay. Oh, Louis calls Santiago a buffoon. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to note that because now Santiago has a
Beef.
like beef
Yep.
vendetta with Louis.
Mm-hmm.
So
Especially because Santiago used to be Armand's main bitch, and now
mm-hmm.
Armand is like all into Louis
Mm-hmm.
and is obsessed with his opinions for some reason.
Who knows? He's like, ooh, a morally just vampire. You're mine now. I'm like, okay, whatever. So Armand's like, you guys need to stay away, otherwise you're gonna get in danger. And Celeste is like super jealous of Claudia for being blonde,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, you could just do that. Like, you could
You could just
just,
stop dyeing your hair. Literally,
yeah,
just let it grow out.
literally. Like, I don't understand. This is a weird problem to have. But
Stupid.
yeah, and then Armand's like, hey, you need to like really toughen up, put a mask on, and like don't let anybody in. And Louis like, I don't know if I can do that. So, um, basically, Louis goes on this whole like hike around Paris for a moment, and he like gets a painting done by some random dude because he's trying to figure out what to do with Claudia because, you know, as you mentioned, he's having this whole like awakening to she wants to be her own person and I need to start living my life, so maybe I should let her move out kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like while he's contemplating this, he goes and gets a painting done and then like drinks the blood of this painter for some reason. He's like, "Oh, I'll hang this painting in our mantelpiece in the hotel." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Why? Why would
Because
you
he's
do that?"
trying to do that. He's trying to do that shit that like your parents do when they realize they've been neglectful and not noticing like all the important parts of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, hey, just over here living my life. And then they're like, you know, it would be really great. Let's talk about the old days. My
Mm-hmm.
dad sends whenever my parents are having an argument. My dad's favorite thing is to like go through all of his pictures that he has and
Mm-hmm.
send a shot from like 20 years ago of the whole family. Look at this. Whole family celebrating 2000 the year 2000.
Oh my
Look at
god.
us with our 2000 glasses on. That's great.
Jesus.
Oh man, look at this. This is us at Disney World and I'm like 15 in my awkward stage where all my clothes are too big and I have pimples everywhere. Isn't this
Mm-hmm.
great? Don't you love looking at these? I'm like, no, I don't. I know what you're trying to do. I get it. I understand. Those are the days. Ah, a family. But also you're mortifying me at 8:30 in the morning. So it'd be really great if you could like put those back where you found them.
Yeah. Every
That's what he's doing. He's like, see, Claudia? We love each other. Look at this.
yeah.
We're a family. She's like, yep. And soon I will move out.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, mm-hmm. But you won't have access to this painting. She's like, I'll commission a small one from my house and my
Yeah.
mantle. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Yeah. She's like trying to do that thing too where when she moves out, she's like, "Okay, I'm going to take this, this and this." And he's like,
Yep.
"Um well, also remember your 5th grade yearbook? You're going to take that too." And
You
you're
need
like,
that too.
"Do I? Like could you just like hold that for me?" And he's like, "No."
Mm-mm.
That's the energy
No.
I'm
If you're
getting.
if you're gonna leave, then leave.
Yeah.
Right? Like get a storage unit if you need to.
Yeah. And
Oh
you're
my
like,
god.
I'm gonna just throw away these priceless memories if you like don't hold on to them. And Louis like, just be gone. Get out of here then.
Just rude.
Truly.
Especially when you consider how long she babied him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I understand he's like, "Oh, I'm your dad," right? He's thinking of this like I'm your dad's sibling lover, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. But at the same time, like she's been putting up with him for like 60 years, right? Like
Yeah.
she's been dealing with his bullshit and his clownery
Well, it has
for
to be
60 years.
it
Like,
has to be more because when you think about it, like Louis and Lestat had slaves.
mhm.
Okay. So then they go from having slaves to being in New Orleans for not a long time,
Mm-hmm.
to getting Claudia, to going to Paris, and now we're talking about servants.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe more like 100 years.
yeah, like it had to have been a long period of time.
This is exactly it. Like, I think, like, and again, like, Louis, I think upon this second read, like, the first time you read this book, I feel like Louis is a very sympathetic character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because if you buy into Claudia is an abomination, right? If you buy into that theme
Mm-hmm.
that she's just like Lestat, right? She's that father's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's reckless. She's, whatever. Like, if you read into all of that, if you don't read into all that and you accept all of that at face value,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like reading this at the beach or something, right? Like, without really like thinking about it, it's very easy to feel like to feel bad for Louis, right?
Mm-hmm.
To feel like Louis has been cursed with two different vampires that have not cared for him. Now he finds Armand. Finally, someone does care, right? Like, part of Claudia's like what the fuck too, I think, is because she's like, you're already moving on with Armand. Like, Armand loves you. He's put his like mark and his fucking
Mm-hmm.
smell all over you. Like, you're obviously moving on. I'm tired of being a third wheel. Like, I want my own life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Louis can't understand that. He can't see the whole thing with Armand. He can't understand like why that would be painful for her. He
Mm-hmm.
can't understand the trauma, right, that she went through with his drama with Lestat, right? Like, she's
Mm-hmm.
born of the drama between and the beef between Lestat and Louis. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get in the middle of that again. Like, I just want my own life. Like, I just want to go live, right? Like, we can still talk. We'll see each other every once in a while. But like, Louis is just like, no, like,
Yeah.
you're leaving me. You're abandoning me, right? Like, I think that like this time, now that I'm reading much more closely, like, Louis is actually a fairly selfish character.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't think, like, he criticizes Lestat for how shitty and overly dramatic and selfish Lestat is. And like,
Mm-hmm.
no doubt, Lestat is absolutely a preening princess dandy boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. But like, Lestat still tries to share things with Louis. Lestat still talks
Mm-hmm.
to Louis, right? He communicates with Louis. Like, I don't see a lot of communication between between Louis and Claudia. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Louis even says, like, when he sees the vampires pick Claudia up and carry her around, it's in that moment that he's like, fuck, I've been carrying her around like that and picking her up like she's a child and
Mm-hmm.
tousling her hair and doting on her in that way, but she's a woman. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't just walk up to a 60-year-old woman and put your hands in her hair, right? Like, that's not what
No.
you do. Like, you don't walk up to a 60-year-old woman that's 4 feet tall and pick her up and put her on your hip. Like, that's not what you
Yeah.
do, right? People have autonomy when
Mm-hmm.
they're older. You can only do that to a child. And he's been like not parenting her, but parenting her this entire time. Like, he's not taking stock of where he went wrong. Like, there's glimpses of it. There's moments where he has clarity and he's like, oh shit, I might have fucked that up. Oh
Mm-hmm.
shit, that probably wasn't the best idea. Oh shit, should have done X, not Y, right? But like, he's not consistently thinking about it and therefore never gets better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He never
Yeah.
improves. And Claudia's just like, I can't wait for you forever. You know what I mean? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't wait for you forever. Like, even if I could teach you things, you're not willing to learn. That's
Yeah.
basically their relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And she really kind of puts her boundaries up, and he's like, no.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this choice for you.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, this is exactly why I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't even feel bad. You're like, I get it. Like, especially because like what he wanted from Lestat was a way to be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's his own hubris and his own like obsession that keeps him from recognizing the reality, right? Because Claudia doesn't know humanity the same way that he does, because she's a purer vampire than he is,
Mm-hmm.
because she's so young. That's how you find the balance. Talking to her about why you feel the way you do, talking to her about, what's going on with you, and, oh, I don't want to kill humans and it fucks me up, right? And then allow her to inform what you're doing, right? Allow her to inform, what how he can find a happy medium or a middle ground
Mm-hmm.
between where Lestat was and where he was, right? To me, the key is Claudia, because like, she's coming at this with nothing. She can only tell you really the base instincts and the base experience of being a vampire. Louis is holding on to humanity. Claudia has none.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, working together, they could have found the answer that they were looking for,
Yeah.
but he doesn't treat her like an equal.
No. He always looks at her as his child.
Yep. Yep. And it's very much to both of their detriment.
Truly. I think on this note, that's a great way to end this episode.
Awesome. Good
So
talk.
truly, we're gonna have a lot more to cover with next week's episode. I think we'll be
Well,
able
the
to.
shit's about to hit the fan, so.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be able to finish up this part.
Yep.
And it's gonna be a lot of fun. So,
Oh my goodness.
Candace, where can the people of the internet find you and your stuff?
You can find me at Candace the Magnificent, all one word, Candace, over on Twitch, Instagram, and YouTube. I will be back with some new ice cream reviews coming soon. By the time this airs, hopefully there will be some up already. And then you can also find me at that Candace Girl on Twitter if you are interested in TTRPGs or just seeing what I am doing about town. You can find me over at 12 Sided Stories, which is a podcast called Bookhound Bounty Hunters, a TTRPG actual play about librarians that are also bounty hunters that will get your books back by any means necessary. So definitely give that a listen if you are bookish and interested in really dorky podcasts.
Great. I love it. I love all your
Yeah,
TTRPGs.
thanks. I love dorky podcasts. Like
Mm-hmm.
dorky is my middle name, so
Same, same.
yeah.
But we will catch you guys the same place next week, unless you're listening to this in the future, and which we'll catch you right in the next episode.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.